So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Studio Scale X-Wing wing moldings. And here, these molds are already sprayed with mold release and have been set. This is just putting talcum powder on them and giving them a slap. I haven't found a really good way to get the talcum powder to move into all the pores and shake around evenly, other than beating it a little bit like this. But this helps the resin wick into all any nooks and crannies in the mold. So I'm lining them up here. These molds have been cut open with a knife, and the knife cuts will just mesh together. You can also see all the pins there. Those are rods that go all the way through to help support it from sagging. This cling wrap is, there will be a little bit of leakage out of the sides of the mold parts. That's just to prevent it from basically leaking all out onto the bottom. That's just a block of wood, and that's just to use less silicone for this mold. And you can see here is going on the aluminum, basically the frame with which it was all in when I molded it, and this holds it all in place. So when you cast it, sort of maintains its dimensions. This is a shim that I put in because after you cure the silicone mold, it will shrink a little tiny bit. So that's like a 15 thou shim so that the mold stays tight within the mold box. The mold box is machined, just stainless steel screws there. I have done many types of frames with mold. This is the first time I've done a machined mold. That was just to ensure that every time I cast the wings, they come out basically exactly the same. The mold hasn't moved or shifted in any way. It's all locked in right here. Well, that's a wooden, round wooden block that I have just so I can lower the mold into the pressure pot once it's cast. And I just give it a little bounce here to try to wiggle those mold parts to all settle in together where the knife cuts are. Here I am opening the two parts for the urethane plastic. This is smooth on task 8, I believe. It's good for casting in thin sections, which the wings, of course, are. Also, it's stronger than the plastic that I use for a majority of moldings, which is a smooth cast 321. This is just measuring up how many grams, because this particular plastic is mixed 1-to-1 by weight. This was using a solo cup to transfer it into the mixing container. It's probably unnecessary when the bucket's this low. You could just dump it out. Just pour it directly into the measuring cup on the scale. This is so strong. It's important to mix the So Strong colorant very well to make sure that there's no unmixed plastic. And you can see this resin is a little thicker than desirable. Most casting resins people use for modeling are much thin, like water thin. It's fine with this particular mold. It does have extraordinarily long pot life and cure time. It's something like 16-hour cure time. But it takes good 20, 30, 40 minutes to set up. So it will get into all the parts of the mold. It's just frustrating to have to pour it so slow. And it does cause it to have a higher tendency to have air bubbles come out much later. And you see it's pouring into the wing sections. They're so thin here that it's taking a while for the resin to get all the way down to the bottom. Here I am tipping it so that there are parts in the mold that will trap air. So you have to lean it one way to get the bubbles to come out, migrate toward the top, and of course then they get trapped somewhere else. So then you flip it the other way and tap it around, and the air bubbles will come out. There is a part on the top of the mold that's designed as basically a sprue gate, or there's an extra mount. So when I did the masters, not only did I have a very thin section around the edges, so it made it easier to cut the molds apart when they were cured, but there was also basically a big chunk at the part at the bottom when I molded it. So now back at the top here, when you're pouring it in, that big chunk you see isn't actually part of the wing. That's basically a lug, and that gives it room to shrink and air bubbles to come up before the mold is curing while it's in the pressure pot, and you haven't ruined your part. I just have strings tied to this piece of OSB to help me carry it into the pressure pot. This particular pressure pot's good to, I believe, 80 psi. I think I run it up to around 60 or 65. The lugs aren't particularly big enough to tighten good. You have to tighten it. It's much more difficult than it should be. I'll probably be reworking them in a better way. I don't know, some sort of thrush washer or something to make it easier. And here we are next day, releasing the air. I do start loosening it before the air is all the way out of the pressure pot, which the air pressure inside makes it harder to loosen, which was a mistake. I probably won't do that again. That's the first time I sort of realized that just a little bit of pressure left makes it very hard to open. Here we yank it back out. Still looks wet, but that's fully cured. I do use stainless screws here. They're quite soft. The heads will gum up eventually and I won't be able to use them, but you probably get 20 or 30 passes out of it before I have to replace the screws. They're cheap. I use stainless so it doesn't hurt the aluminum, basically. Here a little bit of resin has stuck a couple of those rods to the aluminum. And you can see why I had the saran wrap or cling wrap around there. Because if you don't, that'll just continuously leak out and your molded parts will empty from the top before they're cured. So if you see the flash around all the edges, everything, a very small piece of that, about a 1/4 inch or a little better, is a small like 20 thou sheet of plastic that I glued around the edges of the masters, and that was to force the parting line where I wanted it. So I wasn't counting on my cutting ability to cut the mold, and I did want to cast it all in one chunk. So all 4 of those wing parts were basically in the mold box, and I just poured the silicone rubber in there and then cut it apart afterwards. You see all the jagged lines of the molds. So you can see here there's that strip of extra bit I put on around the whole thing. It helps me do just this. Slice this out and leaving exactly the line the way it should be. Because I have this extra bit on the edges, which makes it easier to cut apart, makes cleanup really, really minimal. And here I'm block sanding it as an initial true up on the leading edge of the wing. The idea here is this is going to be my square starting line. At some point I'll trim the root of the wing where it bolts up to like the center block or armature. Here I am squaring it up, so making sure what I just sanded was square vertically, and that gives me a true edge to do any further work off of. It'll be basically machined, cut with a saw, but I want to have a good starting point. And I think I'm even going to true the front face, perhaps with a mill or something. But I won't do that till I have many, many parts done, say 30 or 40 wings ready to go. This is just a look showing you how the 2 parts clip right together. Well, they don't clip, they just nest together. The reason there's 2 parts is because the center part will be laminated to make the wings very, very strong. The biggest problem I've found with the StudioScale X-Wings that I've cast or built in the past is droopy wings. And I don't want to have any droopy wings. You can see here, this particular one, not square. You know, right out of the mold, that leading edge isn't quite square. And you just sand it in, do it every time, so that every pack of 2 that I put on the shelf, I know that front edge is true. These are little bits here that I added to the master to give a little bit of room in case there was an air bubble. Here I am cleaning up the molds, getting them ready for another casting. This is a man, he's released 200. No particular reason why. It was recommended by Smooth On. And I'll clean all the little bits of flash and whatnot, get them fairly clean. Spray them with a coat of the mold release, and then let them sit. And then later I'll come back, talc them up, set them back together, and cast another round. Little bits of flash on the silicone come off pretty easy with the air nozzle. So that's the initial pass on the wings. There's obviously a lot more work to go to get them ready to build the actual X-Wing. There will be more videos to come. Thank you for watching.